Hi friends, it's Vivian here, and this is part 2. So we have reviewed the video recording footage. We reviewed it both with the sound and then the sound off. I provided a voiceover and explained some behaviors the dog was presenting using my experience and knowledge in ethology. There's an intersection of ethology, neuroscience, psychology, and anatomy, and so on and so forth. So there's a cross section of multiple disciplines. Not that I'm an expert in all of them, but we're looking at using a multidisciplinary approach to evaluating a situation between a human and an animal, non-speaking, a non-human animal, and providing a resolution, okay? So what we do is we map out the sequence of events, not frame by frame, but lump it. If we need to, lump it, but we're trying to capture behaviors for both the human and the dog. And what I want to say here is, so we see that Winnie, our dog Winnie, holds the ball in her mouth. She's highly aroused. She's in a play state, in my opinion. Ear and tail carries her up. She's pacing about. So she's in a highly aroused state. How do I know that? Well, again, I'm observing her behavior, and we want to think about when we are observing a dog's behavior, we will never know what a dog is truly feeling because they can't speak to us. But as a behavior specialist, what we do is we are building an ethogram, and through experience, we have come to understand, I've come to understand what behaviors generally are signaling about the dog's emotional state. Now, feelings are internal to the dog. What they emote, how they act, tells us, it gives us a clue as to how they're feeling. And so that there's a lot of literature from Dr. Damasio, Spolsky, and neuroscientists, but then there's also in the veterinary community. Dr. Kathy Murphy is someone that I follow very closely as well to learn from, and then there's a lot of literature that you can read as well. But we know that an aroused state is when the individual's heart rate, respiratory rate is increased, blood flow is moving to the muscles, and so the individual is prepared to move. And so we see a highly aroused state with individuals that are playing, right? And so there are some social cues that they elicit to indicate to others, whether it's conspecifics, other dogs, or in an interspecies small social unit, like human-animal families, and with other species. So dogs will elicit the same behaviors. They're communicating information. So we generally see submission looks like the tail is down, ear carriage down. We can also see it as submissive state is the rollover where the dog is exposing their tummy. And moving up the chart, we start to see, again, there's timidness with the tail is indicating that the individual is feeling feeling some distress, possibly. We call it skittish or shy. And then the tail will rise, mid-tail, high arousal. We look at the tail, ear carriage, and so we know that the dog is eliciting a play. Now, an aroused state can be certainly something that is positive. Aroused state can be positive. It can also be negative, right? So aroused state where the tail carriage is up, and then we start to see some piloerection. The hair stands up. That's not in all cases of dogs, but we do see some proactive aggression. We call it proactive aggression, or even reactive aggression can look the same, but that would be certainly looks very different than a play. The aroused state is the same, right? So in the sense that the body is prepared to act, right? So what's missing here is the color blue and purple, because that is a depressed state. Then there's calm, green calm, and yellow is arousal, where the body is ready to react. And we can have good stress and we can have bad stress. Look at the pictures. I've put some pictures of dogs and humans just so that we can see that as mammals we respond similarly. Certainly we're not the same species. We interpret the world around us very differently based on our sensory perceptions, which have evolved very differently. But our emotions are pretty similar, and there's a lot of evidence to support that from work that's done at Emory University. Dr. Gregory Burns, he was one of the first to start publishing some data on fMRIs in dogs and mapping out the brain, as well as Dr. McCluskey and the Family Dog Project in Budapest. So there's a lot of other wonderful scientists out there that are tracking this. And so we see that the dog will shake off to try to cope with situations that might be stressful, so that they don't percolate their emotions. I like to use the espresso coffee, because I'm Italian, as a way to use just an analogy to use to explain emotions. Emotions are constantly going up and down, and they're only they're not even up still when we're sleeping, because we dream. Dogs dream as well, but unless you're dead, your emotions are fluctuating up and down. And so what we do is we will breathe out. Breathing out of that shake off, there's no peer-reviewed evidence of the shake off. There is some field work that was done in France, 81 dogs, different breeds, different ages, had heart monitors on them. It was shown that when they shook off, their heart rate dropped. Okay, so it may be similar to our breathing, where the vagus nerve is activated to help reduce our heart rate. Our parasympathetic system helps to reduce the heart rate, respiratory rate, and we start to calm. So dogs have learned, as we have to, some dogs have learned to cope with situations, right? And so this is where there's a lot of, the buzzword now is resiliency. So Dr. Kathy Murphy has been pioneering this, which has been great, and the people at Behavior Vets NYC. And we do want to help our young dogs learn to well, first of all, to have agency, so that they can make decisions that work for them in a situation, and we can help guide them so that their nervous system develops in such a way that they're not overloaded, there's no loading going on, and they're able to assimilate to situations, and we can help provide them with better coping strategies, rather than barking and lunging to maybe move away or look at the person for direction, that sort of thing. We can certainly help older dogs as well. So the percolation happens. There's arousal, good stress, bad stress, and we also have the dogs can tip right into reactivity, and this is really an area where they're not able to think. The higher that we get into this zone, it affects their thinking, their ability to think is affected, right? The higher that we get, ability to think is affected. Okay, so so this is just something to think about as I speak here. So now, our dog Winnie, female, intact, adolescent. That's another really big thing here. She's on medication, I believe about 3 weeks now, to help us improve some of her behaviors. She had poor exposure as a young dog to novel things, so there's some neophobia going on. She has general anxiety disorder, and she presents it by vocalizing. There's some advancing and also some retreating that goes on. So during adolescence, things to remember, the brain is growing. The regions of the brain grow at different rates. And according to Dr. Kathy Murphy, who is a neuroscientist and veterinary surgeon, as well as other literature out there, the dogs do have a prefrontal cortex. It's a lot smaller than humans, but the decision-making part of the brain basically talks to the fight or flight part of the brain. That's what normally happens, right? Decisions, fight or flight, that's the amygdala. This is the prefrontal cortex. What happens is there's no communication. The communication is very limited. Well, actually, it's not connected very well. So that's what's going on. But then there's also, the second thing is dogs are, so here they're not able to make good decisions, right? So there are no good decisions. They can't process information. The second thing is, unlike when they were really young, before 3 months of age, the ability to settle, come back down to baseline and settle is really hard, right? So they cannot come back down to baseline quickly. We have to give them time to settle, right? And the third is that if something terrible happens, that'll stick with them for life. Well, it'll be hard to unstick something scary because the amygdala is in full throttle, and there's other mechanisms that are going on, and I am not qualified to talk about that, but I understand that fear lays very strong, and so what is remembered is difficult to unremember. So think of it as it's similar to when dogs are puppies at 13 weeks of age. 12 to 13 weeks of age is a time when their brain is pruning. So we want to expose our dogs to the world that they're going to live in before that time frame. But during that time frame, there's a lot of activity going on in the brain. It's growing and changing, and the amygdala is in full throttle, so to speak, and it's a time that is very, we call it sensitive, and so if something traumatic happens, the dog will remember it for life. So it's a critical period. So that 12, 13 weeks, as well as all the way up through at least through adolescence, and certainly the middle part of adolescence. And adolescence runs from 6 months, 5-6 months to 18, 22 months, about that time frame. Okay, so here we are, and what we want to say is, first we want to look at what happened. Okay, so the trajectory is essentially the dog is playing with the sun, highly aroused in a good place, right? The tail carriage is up, ear carriage is up, ball in her mouth. She's exchanging communication and information. She's excited, but there's no structure, right? So the son asks for a drop it, right? There's a drop it that's asked, and she tries to drop it, but she can't drop the ball. But what we do see is her weaving in and out, touching his body, making contact a couple of times. It takes her 7.28 seconds to finally drop the ball. When she does, Mom starts to vocalize, escalating her vocalization, becoming more agitated or concerned for her son. And then the son, meanwhile, is moving about, and what Winnie does, the dog does, is she drops the ball. Then she looks up, waiting for the next step. And there's some standing over the ball, and then then I can't really see, but it looks like the son makes contact with his leg, possibly squeeze, I'm not sure. She may have gone to the ball. I don't know, I didn't see what happened there, but then there was an ouch and a bite, ankle bite. I clearly saw that a couple of times. And there was some hopping, and then the son moves the dog back, and then she then comes back. All right, so there's a lot of noise right here. So what we want to do is, first and foremost, build up skills. So everyone in the family must adhere to the same communication skills that help the dog manage their understanding and their expectations, right? So we worked on foundation skills: prompted attention, unprompted attention, targeting, right? These are skills that help us instruct the dog to do things, move the dog without force or fear or intimidation. It's a humane way to communicate. It relies on us using a sequence and completing a sequence, which is to use an event marker to mark a behavior we like, followed by a reward. Rewards are going to be different. It's not always going to be food. It might be attention. It might be smelling. It might be a toy, right? So, for example, we could ask for a target. Dog touches their nose to our hand. We mark that event. If we don't have a clicker, we can say yes. We can condition the dog to a yes equals a reward. And the reward in this case, if we were outside playing, would be throwing an extra ball that we have in our pocket, right? In this case, where she dropped the ball over here, right? Actually, she dropped the ball when he drops the ball, and then she looks up at the sun, right? So what we could have done is asked a sit and then a wait. So had we been practicing sit, yes, good girl, sit, wait, yes, good girl. So building a wait in our sit, or asking for a wait, and then picking up the ball, marking, and then rewarding with throwing the ball, that would have been the reward, right? So our objective is to try to reduce or interrupt her from escalating, right, from percolating, even though she's in a good place. Because once she gets up here, she tips. She gets frustrated. She doesn't listen. She can't listen. She can't hear, right? So we want to try to get to her when she's aroused, she's interested, she's motivated, but not up here, all the way up here. So that means we could have started here. So actually, we ask for the drop. She has difficulty dropping because she's enjoying it, right? Remember, she's an adolescent. Processing information is difficult, right? But she's giving it her best shot. And she's trying to regulate by touching, by making contact. So she does this weaving thing, back and forth, and then she drops it. Had we here, when we asked for drop it, had we asked for another behavior, right? Or if we had two balls with us and we bounced a ball, bounce, 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 we would have gained her attention. She might have dropped the ball that she had in her mouth, and then we could have said yes, and then thrown the ball, right? And then picked up the ball that she dropped, held it, and repeat the sequence. Or we could have bounced the ball, had gotten her attention, held the ball to us, and then asked for a sit, right? And sit, and just, again, this is by asking for behavior, we're actually also evaluating her level of arousal, and we're trying to bring her arousal level down, right? So when we can motivate an individual to process information, it moves them away from being emotional. Sorry if you can't read this. So you can't think and be emotional at the same time very well. The brain is structured in such a way that you can't do that. Mammals can't do that. When they're over threshold, so we have talked about threshold gradients, right? Threshold gradients, and this is, threshold. The threshold is the point at which the individual is not able to process information. And for some dogs, that might be here, some dogs right here at the flash point, right? Every dog has a threshold, just like we have a threshold, right? We have a threshold as well, where there's some points where we're just so overloaded with, burdened by something or stressed by something, that if we're not able to reset, that we tip, and we might become upset. Same thing with our dogs. All right. In this case, she's not in a bad place to start. She's happy. But again, eustress, happy arousal, acts the same way, functions the same way as distress, in the sense that the dog is not able to process information well. All right, because they have a small prefrontal cortex. But that doesn't really matter. I've known a lot of people with large prefrontal cortex that are not able to, their executive part of their brain isn't able to function really well, Anyway, so there are things that we could have done here, right here, early on, bouncing a ball, asking for another behavior, and had we been working the skills, prompted attention, unprompted attention, targeting, using an event marker to inform her when she's doing something we like, and then followed up by a reward, she most likely would have, the likelihood of her being able to respond probably would have been higher, because those are skills that you've been working. Now, she's on medication, right? She's on medication. an SSRI, which if we think about an SSRI, it helps to prime the brain for learning. It takes a couple of weeks, anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks to start to work. And if we think about, I want us to think about a cable, so a cable wire, right? The brain is malleable. We're able to help individuals learn new behaviors because we're actually building new pathways, neurobiological pathways, right? So if you think about the training, right? Training as communication wires, right? That's what we're working on. And, we talk about muscle memory. So that's what we're working. If you're doing that consistently, those dendrites are connecting, that pathway is getting stronger, going to point A to B is becoming more direct, again, which processing information helps keep emotions at bay, right? But that the cable wire is, the cable itself is the SSRI. So if we think of the SSRI as the plastic around a cable wire to create that help create the structure and keep it set it so that the communication continues. That's a real layman's way of explaining serotonin reuptake inhibitor. Serotonin is a happy hormone, happy neurotransmitter, and it helps keep us in a good mood, and basically the brain will use up serotonin really quickly, and what the reuptake inhibitor does is it keeps the serotonin in the brain so that the individual is in a good mood, forced to be in a good mood. So it is a buffer for stressful events. And it also, what's really important is by reducing distress, which is something that it helps to do, the brain is able to form memories and learn. Okay, so that's a really, I hope that I was able to convey layman's term of explaining how that helps, and certainly always speak to your veterinarian or board certified veterinary behaviorist about medication, and communicate with them, as well as your behavior training team, behavior consultant, about behaviors that you have questions about. So we're always observing behaviors, our behavior, our dog's behavior. Certainly we're looking at what's happening before behavior happens. So what happens before the bite, right? So this is where the whole ABC comes in, antecedent management, ABC, where we build behaviors that are unwanted, and we want to understand what the function of the behaviors are. We always start with the behavior and then look at immediately what's happening before the behavior. It could be an immediate situation, or it could be something that the dog has happened long before, and the dog is just building up, holding on to that energy and that stress, and hasn't released it, and so that causes a dog to tip. But I hope this was helpful. I know it's a little messy, but I did want to let you know that there are some really productive things that we can do. It does start with building up our communication skills and using them all the time, in the house, outside of the house, always with our dogs. using behavior modification operant skills, counter conditioning, desensitization, play therapy, so we will toggle back and forth. The answer is not always going to be the same. We're going to have different resolutions, right? Circumstances are not always going to be the same. But build up our skills, prompt attention, mark reward, capture attention, mark reward, complete that sequence of marking, then rewarding, right? And so if we have some of those skills and we play a structured play game, we can help to shift our dog's emotions, intercept the arousal. Certainly when it gets to a point where there's that contact, then hey, you know what? No way, man. Time out. I'm not playing with you anymore. And we do that. We leave as long as it's safe. And I know in this case, there is a fenced-in yard. We all, whoever's there, the person with the camera, the child, goes into the house, leaves the dog outside. Time out. See you later. Right? For about 10, 15 Mississippi seconds, and then comes back out. And we repeat that time out as many times as we need to inform the dog, time out. The consequence of that behavior means we leave. So consequences are really important. Learning by the principle of consequence is really important. I did when I was young. My mom and dad taught me. Anyway, so again, we're looking at behaviors from multiple lenses. We are evaluating a situation through multiple lenses. This is just a way to take a step back, take a 30,000-foot view, and come up with solutions that are humane and don't cause our dog to stress, so that we can improve our relationship, maintain our trust, our dog's trust in us. Okay. Thank you for listening. Let me know if you have any questions. Bye.